I actually grew up in Southern Virginia, on a farm, really. So I've always been very in tune with nature and Mother Earth. I first ventured out of that domain under the teachings of Mr. Carl Hankins, who was a martial arts instructor. He really kind of introduced me to a culture outside of the rural culture of Suffolk. And then I spent 22 years in the military as a soldier of war. And all that time, though, I was writing and discovering a different side of myself, another type of soldier. I talked about this yesterday, but that's my evolution. And so now, through the Hampton Roads Youth Poets and Team with Purpose, and a lot of other really talented people in this community, like me and Minerva, and just everybody working together to just enlighten a new generation of people about what it is to be aware of your environment, of people, to love one another. So that's basically why I am.
Well, I'm an actor and a writer, and under writing I list playwright, poet, journalist. I've been a writer longest of all. I learned journalism on a daily newspaper when I was in college. And then I went to graduate school and found that it wasn't for me, graduate school in English. So I dropped out. I happened to be married at the time to my wife of the present day, 48 years. That amazes people, including myself. I was a conscientious objector during the Vietnam War, but when my number came up, I turned tail and ran and disappeared for a while until the age limit passed and I could resurface. So I was an underground hippie for 4 or 5 years and participated in that culture, and that was transformative for me. I became a lover of nature because I spent a lot of time living outside. And I brought it all back and began writing newspaper articles for an alternative paper, and eventually found my way into theater, where I wrote something like 30 scripts, and they've all been produced, although you've never probably heard of any of them, except maybe some that I've done here. I moved here in 1994 from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which was my hometown, because I wanted to be near the water. I had no idea. Well, I had an idea, but I didn't really understand the full meaning of military presence and how you can't really live in this area without being constantly made aware of war. And this kicked into my background in the 60s, and I began to write for Portfolio Weekly. I wrote for them for 10 years. Meanwhile, doing theater, and in about 2005, maybe, I became exposed to the slam poets of this area. Some of you may remember Queen Sheba, who left, but Godchild is still here, those people, and Nathan too. And I thought, well, I can do that. So I started to do dramatizing my own. I started to write poetry and act it out myself. And most of my poetry is on the subject of the natural world and its beauties and inspirations, and also peace, war, anti-war, and so forth. I consider myself somewhat of a visionary in the sense that I have had and still occasionally have visions. And I incorporate those into my work as well. So I think I've said enough.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Philip Benango. I was born in the Philippines, in Mindoro, Philippines, and my day job is that I work for Operation Smile, which is a global children's medical charity that provides free surgery for children born with cleft palates, cleft lips, and facial deformities. And that pays the bills. But my real true calling and true passion really is to cultivate creativity. I've been around in this area since the early 80s, and I've produced and directed almost over 24 theater productions here, and I've written a couple of plays as well. But my true calling really is to help become a catalyst for other people, for other creatives. And I've worked as a graphic designer, I've worked as a photographer, and October of last year, 2010, I just happened to have my camera and I was strolling down 35th Street in Park Place and just taking photos of textures and, really pretty boring day and Saturday of, it was 11:55 a.m. and just taking photos, nothing really too special. And then I was stopped by this amazing sound of chimes that were just ringing through the air, and just an amazing song just played on for 5 minutes, and I was just frozen, just in silence of this song just enveloping me, just raining on me like these icy cold daggers just piercing into my really, cynical soul. And just listened to it, and I turned around to face the direction it was coming from Park Place Methodist Church, and what lay before me was present day. It was 35th Street, it was present day, but I felt I was transported through a wormhole, even though I was still standing where I was, and I saw this vision in front of me of a street that was filled with people. There were no longer vacant buildings or abandoned shops. It was full of people, full of vibrancy, pedestrian streets, street lights on, the marquees were turned on. It was an amazing, peaceful place to be a witness to. And the chimes were still ringing throughout all this, and finally I was kind of transported back to present day. So it felt like I had a bit of a Charles Dickens, moment there. And where I was standing is in front of where my shop is today. And I felt in that calling were 3 simple words, were to be here now. And so that became really the motivator for opening up an artistic coffee shop, was that you just never know who will cross your threshold and whose lives you may be able to transform by just having an open light, or just being open and having your lights on. So even though we struggle every day to rub our nickels together to keep the lights on, it's important to be an active agent of change within your community just by having your doors open. You just never know whose lives you're going to change that day. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. I am Greg Henry. I'm primarily a studio artist. I create paintings, sculptures, and I also do woodcut printmaking. So I'm pretty much a studio artist. And I was born in Guyana, South America, and I started creating objects when I was quite young, about six years old. I usually tell this story. In Guyana, we live in these sort of stilt houses because it's below sea level, and I have 3 sisters, and I would be being the only boy. I wanted to sort of get out of the house. I didn't want to be there with my sisters. But also when you have the tropical rains, the rain would run under the bottom of the house, and it would get all muddy, and then I would have to go upstairs. So I started cutting these little trenches through the yard to cause the water to run from one side of the yard to the next. And that means I could stay downstairs and I can play under the house. So I felt like, looking back, it looks like that's where my art painting started. I started making little boats and things that would run through those little channels. And then also, when I got an allowance, I used to go out and buy. You could get 5 little chickens, the fluffy yellow chickens. You can buy 5 of them for $1, and I would raise them, and then eventually they would become food for. So, but I've sort of moved around. I came to the United States when I was 12 years old, and I lived in New I'm going to be like all the big name artists that I admire. And also I've been teaching for almost 24 years. And over the years I've noticed that more and more so my students' joy when they have success, or when I watch a student come in and when they're shy and not making connections or having a hard time, and I would work with them and we had a determination to work with maybe a particular student or a group of students, and at the end of 4 or 5 years, you see this just a totally different person. So I started to realize the importance of not only me being creative and making my artwork, but also the importance of helping people develop their creativity. And as I just mentioned, it seemed like it was a smooth transition. Of course, it wasn't. There was a lot of knocks in the head for me to realize that maybe I need to spend more time, maybe I need to go. And this is a constant development, and the ability to always learn something from my students in the classroom or outside of the classroom. So I don't know if I cover all bases, but that's what I'd like to say to this point. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
As Philip had mentioned about the thresholds, how we meet different people through different activities. We have been performing outside, and we have been meeting with a lot of different people who never knew that we had an exhibit. And I want to introduce one of the artists that I met. He's a street artist, and his name is JP. And I also invited him to be on the panel. So it's an ad hoc, if you don't mind. So you don't have a table space, but. So can you introduce yourself as well? And,
yeah, I'm JP, and I'm a street artist, also a cartoonist, and I've been doing funny caricature portraits of people on the streets. Used to do it at Universal for about 3 years in Orlando, Florida. And I moved out here in the last, I guess, 4 months. And I like Norfolk. It's a nice town, you know, a lot of things going on. It looks like the art world is starting to come together out here. Also, I found out about Phil Spot, Kerouac. Yeah, and that's actually where I hang most of the time. So, funny he's here. And that's about it. You know, I'm just trying to help out with the art scene, and you know, hopefully get some people into it, more people involved.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for your introductions and letting us get to know you a little bit better. I'm going to start the panel off with a question, and then we'll take questions from the audience, and hopefully we'll get to know you guys a little more, and maybe how we can come on with ourselves. We're not already, which I know many of you are. All right, so my question to the panel is, who or what inspires you? I know you guys kind of touched on that, but you can elaborate on specifics. Do you want to take a stab?
There's so many big people that inspire me. Of course, my mentor. I can say Daisaku Ikeda is my mentor, and his writings on a daily basis really encourage me. Also, the people around me, at work, at home, the people who I interact with. There's just so many things when you're thinking about something and you're going through maybe a creative block. Someone would just come up and say something to you, or they would say it in passing, and you would just catch that, and it really stick to my life, and then I can really use it. As someone just said on the panel, if I'm remembering correctly, your environment